Thank you, everybody, for joining us. This is the Infrastructure Sewer Roundtable. My name is Chad Smeltzer. I am your host. Today, we have our guest, well-known guest, Nick Spano with Essential Equipment, Susan Chin Tyler with Diva Doodoo, correct?
Creative Raven and the Doodoo Diva, host of the Doodoo Divas
Diva
weekly Smells Like Money podcast.
Love it, love it. And then Alex Churchill with InfoSense and Chris McDonald with the CPM Pipeline Company. Thank you guys so much for joining us. To anybody that's on watching this live podcast, or I think I'm back on podcast, live event, please just comment in the chat box. If you have any questions during our conversations, or if you want us to talk about any certain different types of topics, please make a comment. Thanks, Matt Stiller, Chad Piper, Zach, for leaving those comments. Everybody just post those comments. We're going to get started with the introductions. I'm going to start with Nick. Nick, thanks for joining the live sewer roundtable.
Hey, thanks for having me, Chad. Spano with the O. Yeah, glad to be here. Been in the sewer business for about 12 years now. Formerly working for contractors, performing sewer work, starting with smoke testing back in the day, straight out of college and in the field. Went on to manage projects, doing cleaning and TVing inspection. And now we're in equipment sales and service. So we service gap backs, Rapid View, and iBot camera products. And happy to be here from Houston.
Thanks, Nick. Susan, you're up next.
Hey, I'm Suzanne Chin Taylor. I began my career in the wastewater industry in 1998 as the marketing director for a CCTV camera manufacturer. And they got bought out by a big conglomerate, which we're seeing a lot in these days. But this was way back. And not a question if you're going to get laid off, but when. But I decided I wanted to stay in the industry because I fell in love with the people in this industry. And here I am. That happened in 2006, all these years later. And now I am actually an international entrepreneur. We have offices here in Arizona as well as Bangalore, India. And I am a published author in 2 books in the Library of Congress, course creator, and the host of the weekly Doodoo Divas Smells Like Money podcast that is dedicated to the wastewater industry to deliver know-how from industry pros who know how. So really honored, Chad, that you asked me to be part of this incredible group.
I love it, Susan. Your podcast is amazing. And I love the content that you're putting out there. It's great. Alex, you're up next.
Yeah, so Alex Churchill with InfoSense. We're a Charlotte, North Carolina-based manufacturer of a product called the Sewer Line Rapid Assessment Tool. I'm one of the owners here and have been involved with the company and my partner, the inventor, Ivan Howitt. I've been involved in the industry almost 12 years now. So, I've been trying to commercialize or have commercialized this new technology to help optimize how sewers are cleaned with using acoustics and the Sewer Line Rapid Assessment Tool.
Awesome. Thanks, Alex. It's a great tool, that's for sure. Chris McDonald, you're up next.
All right. Thanks, Chad. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. My name is Chris McDonald. I'm the president and CEO of CPM Pipelines out of Phoenix, Arizona. You know, I started in the industry back in 1999, so Suzanne has me by a year. But started with U.S. Pipe and Foundry, went into distribution for a while, and then started CPM Pipelines about 12 years ago. So over the course of the past 12 years, we've kind of went back and forth with a few successes and a lot of failures, and figured out our place is specializing in pressure pipe inspections, primarily inline inspection tools and also external validation tools, as well as pressure pipe rehab. So as a company, we kind of introduced flexible fabric reinforced pipe systems into the United States about 10 years ago, have done over 110 projects, and finally seeing that kind of come to fruition with the development of some new AWWA and ASTM standards that are right now being developed. So thanks for having me, and I look forward to talking with everybody.
Awesome, Chris. Thank you so much for the background. My name is Chad Smeltzer. I started in public works and wastewater treatment plants. When I was 15, my dad ran a small wastewater treatment facility in Wrightsville, Pennsylvania. I think it was 1993 I started to learn about wastewater treatment. Since then, as I got out of high school, I decided that I didn't want to be in the sewer industry. So I joined a company straight out of high school, started working for them, doing pest control, brought me into grease trap maintenance, believe it or not. And we were treating restaurant grease traps with a bacteria to keep the level of grease down. And then I learned so much about how big of a problem grease was in the sewer industry, in the sewer pipes. And I'm thinking to myself, well, if this bacteria works here, it should work in the sewer pipes. And that's where my entrepreneurship started. I built my first company back in 2008, 2009, doing bacteria remediation of fats, oils, and grease. I ended up working with Duke's Root Control for 10, 12 years. And then I started another company called RMS Utility Services with Michelle Harrod back in 2016, 17. And since then, now I'm on a mission to fix infrastructure procurement, because as we get into these conversations, infrastructure procurement is a big hassle for a lot of us. And my goal is to build a software system that'll make the B2G space a lot easier to connect and procure goods, services, and materials. So that's a little bit of my background. So we're going to kick this off with our first question. And I'm sure we're going to have many other conversations after this. What drives municipal utilities incentives to adopt to new technologies? Now, I've been in this industry a long time. I know that as a salesperson, to bring in a new tech into the government space, to walk into a buyer and tell them, hey, I got this great tool, it's going to make your life easier, that it's not that easy. It doesn't magically happen overnight. They're not giving you purchase orders. There's so many objections that you have to get over. And, I think we need to shed light on why that is. Like, why are government entities so resistant on adopting new technologies fairly quickly? So I'm going to continue with Nick on this. He gave me the look like, seriously, you're going to go to me? So Nick,
Okay.
why do you think municipalities aren't adapting to new technologies like right away? And it takes a long time.
I think part of it is the government's overall goal to sort of protect the tax dollars. I think it'd be a huge sensationalized headline if, some government got taken advantage of by, some snake oil salesman. So I think and then I know there's been problems in the past with, sort of that good old boy way of doing business that I think is just, overall, we're trying to move away from that. And I think what the byproduct of that is, it slows things down. There's the bid process is good. I don't know that the low bid process is good. I think the more municipalities that move to a qualifications based system, I think that's one way that it can be made better. But I think overall the intention is good. But just maybe nobody thought of the unintended consequences, which is just everything becomes super slow.
Yeah, that's a good point. Susan, you want to give us your insight onto this?
Yeah, I think I agree with Nick. It's all about risk. Everybody's afraid to be the first one to try something. The question is, and I see this a lot with companies that are coming in with technology from overseas, that, oh, well, that's great that you've had great success in Europe or Asia or whatever, but where have you done it here? Everybody's afraid to be the first one to try it. And I think that the way that we have to overcome that is by being open to, as manufacturers, being open to performance trials, pilot projects, getting grants, maybe even there's a lot of grant money out there, saying, well, listen, we'll take the risk off of you if you're willing to come up and work with us. Let's get a grant and do a pilot project. And if it works, great. Then you take it. If it doesn't work, we take our toys and go home. And so making it a no risk may help for adoption. What it is, it's that, well, we've always done it. It's kind of like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Right.
But I think we also have to be able to share. I love the principle of using the economic impact report. Hey, if I could save you this much money, would you be willing at least to try it? It's all going to be about educating them. It is. It's along what you were saying. It's a long sales cycle. It's a long uphill battle, but we can't give up so soon. If we're trying to introduce something new, we have to keep going after that third or fourth no.
Yeah, good point. That's really good. Alex, you're up next, buddy.
Yeah, so I would agree. I think there's certainly risk aversion. There's certainly desire to follow the rules. There's the status quo piece. I was with someone this week, and he was in a presentation with about 10 different utility directors, and they got to talking about his competitor's product. And he said, they make a good product. They're good people. They make a good product. And one of the utility directors said, I can't believe you're talking about one of your competitors in this meeting. And he said, my competition isn't that guy. My competition is the status quo. Trying to get people to change what they're doing. I'm not so worried about the other guys in the industry in my space. I'm worried about trying to get you guys to all change what you're doing. And we see that all the time. If there's not enough pain or problems, it's very hard to get people in the industry to move away from the status quo. And even a lot of times when there are pain or problems, they've been doing it so long, like, yeah, we've always had those problems anyway. We're just going to keep doing what we've always done.
It's so true. So true. Chris, you're up, buddy.
Well, and to what Alex said, it's the devil you know versus the devil you don't know, right? If you're the people we work with and call on and deal with every day, there's problems with things they're doing, but they know what the problems are. And even if we come in with a solution that solves that problem, they're always thinking, well, what other problems could there be? Okay, if I can fix that, but what else is there? So I think that has a lot to do with it. The other two things I think that are really important, you're dealing with the establishment. I think Alex can attest to this. I mean, so, when you're coming in with a new product that's going up against the establishment, you've got a big hill to climb because you're one small company going up against the industry and you're trying to make a change. And every single yes you get is negatively impacting the pocketbook of the establishment. So you've got the entire establishment against you, trying to convince everybody that what you're doing doesn't make any sense or it's magic or whatever the case might be. And the fact is they're doing that out of fear because they know you've got something that threatens their position in the market. And, and the problem with that is that establishment, those are the people that are those clients' trusted advisors at that point. So the first person they call when you come in with something new is the guy that they've been doing business with for 20 years that's doing what you're coming up and trying to compete against. So that's a big problem, and that's a big challenge that we all have to overcome with. And we were talking earlier before the event started about education. So this is all about educational selling at this point, and that's what we're all doing with the kind of unique solutions we bring to the table. So that's critical in overcoming those trusted advisors and them recommending that clients don't work with you because it threatens their position. And then the other main problem we run into a lot, or that I see, if you come in with something new, like for example, and we've got some of the consultants we all work with here on the call, the consulting companies we all work with, they're established and they're already doing business with these clients. So, I mean, let's say just for sake of argument, the local firm is doing $10 million with a local client. Well, if they keep doing things the way they're doing it today, none of that's ever threatened. I mean, unless they have a major problem with something they're already doing. So if they come in and try to bring a new solution to the table as the advisor to the client, it potentially puts millions and millions of dollars at risk over something that's untested and unproven. In addition to that, I think there's insurance things that come into play. And when these guys are developing specifications, there's insurance policies and different things tied to these things. And, to make a significant change to one of those standard specifications is a much bigger deal than just changing a couple of sentences in a standard. or in a specification. So like I had mentioned earlier, with some of the things we're doing, you've got to get those new standards developed. You've got to get those new, like ASTM or AWWA standards developed around the system you have, because that lends credibility to what you're doing. And then it gives the consulting community something they can utilize when they go talk about these things with clients as kind of a baseline to show that these technologies or tools have been vetted, they've been investigated, they've been studied, there's been drafts written. And anybody that's involved in any of these standards committees knows it takes years and years and years in a lot of cases to develop them. So there's some strength in that. But you can't expect somebody to go in and kind of carry the torch for you that's got millions of dollars of business potentially at risk if you bring something in that doesn't work out the way you said it will. So I think that's a big problem. And then on the flip side, the client's kind of in the same situation. If I'm working at the city and I've moved up to a certain level or a certain position within the city, and somebody brings something new in, if I don't change anything, I really can't be held responsible for anything that goes wrong at that point. And I don't put my job and my career and my income in jeopardy. If I come in, with guns blazing and say, we're going to make all these radical changes and we're going to start doing all this new stuff, if it goes great, I'm a hero. But at the end of the day, how much recognition in the organization does that hero get, and how much pay increase does he get for being the hero? Probably little to none. But if I come in guns blazing and everything goes sideways, I can guarantee you, I can tell you what's going to happen. You're either going to get fired or you're going to get shoved in a corner for the rest of your career until you decide to go somewhere else. So there's a lot of risk. And there's not much upside for bringing new technologies into the conversation unless there's a very serious pain or some very serious savings associated with it. And that's one of the main things you have to do when you're looking at, different options and different new technologies. Like for me as a business owner, that's one of the first things I ask. Like, what's it cost? How do we deliver it? How do we get, because if there's not a huge amount of money involved or savings involved, and you're just coming in with like an equal or something similar to what they're doing now, and it costs the same, it makes the task unsurmountable.
That's a good point, Chris. There's a lot of good points you had there. I mean, I'm going to come back to that. I really am. I have a lot of follow-up questions for everybody.
Yeah. Hey, Chad, real quick. I think we're getting some comments that say a lot of viewers are going to the wrong link for some reason.
I'm not sure why that would be the case. Some people are in, some people aren't. Hopefully, I can figure that out. Yeah, so
see somebody
people are in chatting, so I'm assuming that something's working. So we'll continue. We can rebroadcast it later at another time as we're recording this whole event. So I'm gonna keep going.
This is exactly why I don't adopt new technologies.
Thanks, Chris.
That's answering his own question.
You're a part of the establishment. This is the problem. I'm telling you right now. You're done.
We should have done this in person. Why didn't we do this in person and just have everybody fly to Phoenix? The weather's great out here.
That's actually a good point. We will start doing this maybe at some point in time, have live events at certain locations. That'd be awesome. Okay, Chris or Nick, you mentioned something about that I've always, when I first started doing sales in this industry, snake oil salesman, you mentioned this. I want you to elaborate a little bit more on what you mean by what is a snake oil salesman?
Oh, well, I mean, I think maybe, there's some people out there that, that maybe just don't have tested products, there's always going to be the gimmick side of things, the quick fixes, those are going to exist in every industry. Nothing that's exclusive to ours.
Right.
But yeah, I think that, I don't know. I just think it goes back to relationships and people knowing that you have good intentions.
I'll throw something here. I think we're in a very unique industry, and I had some experience in the waste industry, the solid waste industry before this. And what we would see is that there was a similar mentality or resistance to new products in the industry. And a lot of that came from things like somebody's trying to sell you a bulldozer and you tell them, boy, working in a landfill is terrible on bulldozers. Say, oh, no, ours is great. It's so rugged. It'll work great. And they don't. They have to be modified for that industry because of the special needs it has. And our industry, sewer industry, is the same way. And you get people saying, oh, I invented this over here. I'm going to try to apply it to your industry, and it's going to work great. And maybe it will, but a lot of times it requires some significant adaptation, and that's sometimes where they get a bad reputation, is they didn't realize the adaptation that needed to happen, and their product fails, at least in the initial trials and usage.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. My experience with snake oil salesmen go back when the phone calls to the wastewater treatment plant guys. I remember walking into the treatment plants, the superintendent sitting there, and they would get calls from random people trying to sell them 50 gallons of chemicals. I'm like, what? They just called you? They're like, yeah, I get it all the time. They just forced me to like buy a 50-gallon, of this item or a package of this item. And then they would keep reshipping it and reordering it. And then they'd have to fight through that whole process of dealing with that. Susan, you look like you've heard this before. It's one of those things where that builds a terrible reputation for salespeople just selling products to the government buyers. I can see how that would, start that whole process of, what is called snake oil salesman, so to speak. Susan, what were you were shaking your head there. I got a question for you too.
No, I know exactly what you're talking about, and alluding to something that Chris said about you come in as a new person trying to pitch something, and they're going to call someone that they know, that they trust, that may be your competitor or, the technology that you're trying to replace. And so the position that we have to take is we have to fight and do our level best to become one of those trusted resources, one of those trusted advisors, and not, I think we've shifted, especially now that we're in a digital selling environment, a virtual selling environment. It's so difficult to create that level of trust. And so if we adopt first, let me be of service. I put in the chat, maybe approach them with, I love this question when Dr. Phil ever asks and say, when they've got a pain point, yeah, so how's that been working for you? And let them be honest about it. Not that you're, going to try to replace it, but give yourself the time for them to begin to trust you as much as they trust that other guy, that your intentions are not, hey, I want to make a quick buck off of you. No, let me find out what's going on. What are your pain points? I may not have the solution for you, but maybe I know someone that does. Or maybe I can connect you with someone that can advise you on this. So now you've taken that stress off of them, that they're in the hot seat having to say no to you of what you're trying to sell. And now it's just becoming, let's have a conversation. Let's develop a relationship and see what happens.
Yeah, true. I mean, that's
to shift the way we show up, because the paradigm, not just in our industry, but worldwide, we're on a new trajectory now. We want to think that we're going to go back to that normal that we had before COVID. No, it's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. Things have shifted dynamically, and we have to shift with it.
They have. Going back to what you said at the beginning with our first question, Susan, you're talking about grants, and this is probably a whole nother live segment we need to work on or have another post about or something. But I don't think people understand how to get grants, for or from the government, I should say. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
It takes a lot of work, and unless you've got a big department in-house or someone that knows how to write grants and apply for these, it's probably better if you're really interested to work with a grant writer or somebody that specializes in that, because they're going to know where the money is, which program you should apply to, and how you have to pitch yourself.
Right.
And it might be a worthwhile investment. So sometimes, and I've seen this where it becomes a collaboration between an entity that needs it or wants to try a technology and the manufacturer, that they work together to apply for the grant.
It's a great idea. I love it.
Worked with someone that did something that they did it hand in hand with the Tennessee Department of Environmental Protection, the campus of Tennessee State University, and the manufacturer of the technology that wanted to prove that they could resolve this issue on the wetlands. And so they got the grant together.
Nice.
So it's being able to explore different options, that it doesn't always have to fit into one mold.
Yep. Makes sense.
And another great thing a lot of people don't think about is with new technologies, P3, public-private partnerships, are another great way for, if they don't have the funding. That's another avenue to really, that's probably another talk for another segment. That is a fantastic avenue that a lot of small cities are not exploring. And if they haven't heard about it, a new thing just came through. I can't remember if it's I think it's the Rural Water Association, in concert with, I forget who it is, but there is a tremendous amount of money that is going to be coming down the pike for small cities that are willing to adopt new technology to solve problems, that they're going to have matching dollars or sometimes fully funded dollars. We can talk about that in another business, but there are things out there.
Yeah.
So money shouldn't be the obstacle.
Shouldn't be, but it's all a matter of putting it all together and applying for the grants and things like that.
Again, Chad, it gets back to like what Chris was saying, education, and we need to be one of those trusted advisors.
Exactly.
We've got the smarts. We can do it.
Yes, we do. This whole team has the smarts to do this. I guarantee. I don't know if we have the time, but we'll figure that out later. So Alex, all right. You and Chris have something very similar. We're gonna get really interesting conversation going with this one. Disrupting the status quo, you mentioned, Alex, in your response to the first question. And now I have Chris talking about the establishment. Now this can get really sticky, but I think what we should do is Alex, elaborate a little bit more on the status quo. What do we mean by disrupting the status quo?
Well, I think for our product, one of the things that we've always tried to be very clear about is there's other alternatives in the industry. There's other products. There's CCTV is kind of an industry standard for pipe inspection. There's all kinds of equipment to clean and rehab pipes. And what we try to tell people is our product is another tool in your toolkit. This doesn't replace any of the other products. We're not necessarily trying to compete with them. We think we feel that our product is complementary with what else is in the industry. We help make those other products more effective and more valuable. But there are people that always want to try to take that to a negative side, to think that, well, if you're going to do more of this, then you're going to do less of that. And that's where people, feel threatened. So that's, I'd say, just kind of from an industry equipment manufacturer type of ecosystem. And then there's within the utilities as well. We were talking about the status quo and changing. There's a certain level of people in the organization, whatever organization that is, they're responsible for the budget and the financials, and they want to save money, and they want to do they want to make changes, and they want to be as efficient as possible in what they're doing. But there's also and we kind of see this frequently in the layer in between that utility director and the field operations, are the people that actually have to make all this stuff happen and implement the new technologies and make it work. And a lot of times those people, like Chris was saying, there's not a lot of upside for them in making a change. And so, sometimes we're asking them to come in and asking them to make a big change in what they're doing, and there's no upside for them. Like, wow, so you want me to adopt something new, do all this extra work to make something different than it was. And even if they see, boy, it might be better on the other side of this rainbow that you're pointing to, but that's a really tall mountain you're trying to get me to climb, and there's no what's in it for me. And so I think those are all those are the primary issues we see when talking about trying to disrupt the status quo.
Yeah, that's really interesting, Alex, because I hadn't really totally considered that you do have to have a bottom up and a top down buy-in to really for that client to embrace and get the most out of the new tech or whatever it is. I say new tech, but any change in in operations.
Yeah, in our industry, there's a lot of old tech that's being adopted as new tech, but in other places, it's been around for a long time.
When you have to,
Right,
the one thing that kind of comes into that same conversation when it comes to like budgets and different things, you've got to give and empower people at organizations, especially on the municipal side, control of budgets, and you can't penalize people for better utilizing budgets, and that's what tends to happen. So if somebody comes up with a great idea, it saves their department 20%, 5%, 2%, whatever that number is. Well, then if they keep doing that year over year, somebody looks at it and goes, oh, well, they're spending less money. They're not using the budget, or they haven't reallocated it within their budgets to do something else with it. So they say, well, this guy over here that's not doing a good job and he's mismanaging his budgets. He needs more money. So let's give him that extra 5%. And then the guy that just saved the money is like, wait a minute, I could have used that money to hire a couple more technicians or provide better training, provide a safer work environment for my crews by providing better training, or help them. There's so many things they could have better utilized the money. And I mean, I'm going to divulge into politics if I'm not careful, so I probably need to just stop. But it's broken. It's broken, and I don't know how to fix it. I mean, I have enough trouble trying to figure out how to fix things at my small company with 10 or 15 people in it. What do I know about running an organization that's got thousands of employees? Nothing. But those are the challenges that those people face, and it's the shortcomings of the system.
Yeah, it's all really true. I was going right to the question, Chris, of the establishment. So you were walking that fine line of going into the establishment, and that is where we all kind of made similar, putting it all together. Nick, you said the top down, bottom up, top down. I think that a lot of our struggle is biasness in the industry, and I think that's where this all plays together, right? It's a lot of bias out there, a lot of threats to maybe the traditional way we're doing things, for example. So I could see how all this, plays a big role in how they're not adapting to new technologies. It's all this plays, the same role together. So I guess as we, look at ways to improve sewer infrastructure, right? What could we be doing better? And this is for everybody. What could we be doing better? And I think we're trying to get to that answer, but what could we do better as salespeople, business owners, and things like that to make change?
I think training is so important. What?
Where do you start?
Where do you start? Right. No, that's it right there.
Nick's got a starting point maybe, but yeah, like where do you even begin? I mean, you can do everything better. We can all do everything better. Everybody can do things better. It's just how much are you willing to invest in it?
Right.
How much can you invest?
And let's look at InfoSense real quick. Your technology, 12 years, been in business, adopted by 1,000 municipalities. Look at that conversion rate. That's that it seems like a long time for a lot of adaptation, 12 years to get a technology that could change a lot of the ways we find sewer blockages in sanitary sewers. Look at that stuff. We're still missing out on the market share to get our products out there.
And I think, Susan was talking about becoming that trusted advisor. And that is something that is important to getting new tech or getting anything into this environment. And that's hard to scale. When you look at a startup company, what are you trying to, there's all kinds of things that you can get scale with. What you can't get scale with is that bonding and rapport and becoming that trusted advisor. It takes a long time to do that. And so when your customer acquisition costs are very high in this industry, it's just very hard to get into a new client and build the trust that you need to take things to the level of them actually making a purchase decision. And that's a limited, that is one of the key limiting factors that we've found.
Yeah, that's true. Susan,
go
ahead.
And you got to be willing to be disruptive, but not like, there's people in our industry that take disruption a little too far, I think. I won't name any names, but but you've got to do it to some degree, I think, to kind of rattle cages and get people's attention. And I mean, I'm an offender, like if I've been, working and trying to work with somebody over time, I might start jabbing them a little or poking them a little just to get their attention, because at the end of the day, you haven't found any common ground or gotten them to give you an opportunity at that point. But you got to be a little bit careful, obviously, with that. But, and the conversion rate, the challenge is like Alex knows and I know, because everything we do as a company is we don't do any commoditized stuff. Like everything we bring to market is basically disruptive and new and has been for a long time. But the trick is you got to get that conversion and you got to get it somewhere and you got to get somebody to use it before you go broke.
Yep. It's true.
That's the challenge, is like making it happen. It may not happen quickly, but it's got to happen quicker than you run out of money to keep funding it. Because we're all putting our hearts and our efforts and our money into these ideas and these technologies because we believe in them. But it's just, and I think if more people in the industry, when I started this company 12 years ago, I was grasping for everything I could find. Like, just give me something that's new to go out and talk to people about. Like I said at the beginning, a lot of those failed. I mean, I've got a whole literature box out front full of failures. But, you find a few good ones along the way, and then eventually you kind of get to the point where you can't afford to even have a little bit of a hiccup because you've come too far, you're too invested, you've got too much to lose. So then what happens is you end up having to do a lot of that research and investigation well ahead of ever bringing anything into the marketplace. And a good example is the latest technology we brought in from the Netherlands. I started looking at this stuff probably over 2.5 years ago, and we just signed a contract in March to bring this nationally into the United States. And it took 9 months since then to get our first project on the board. And I'm sold. I'm bought, sold. I think it's amazing I think what Alex has brought to the market is pretty spectacular and amazing. But it takes a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of investment. And I think sometimes people miss that piece because they don't really know what we do and they don't see what we do. So I think, and it comes back to the education piece, like them understanding how much we've invested in this and how long it took us to get familiar and comfortable with it, to even put our company name behind it, is, I think, sometimes lost. Now, we have a lot of people that we have a lot of great relationships with, and we are that trusted advisor. But for the people that we're not, especially as like we try to scale this nationally, and I'm sure as Alex scaled theirs from the Carolinas nationally, and you're not that person yet. So you try to find people to get them on your team that are that trusted advisor. And I've been really fortunate to get some outstanding people on my team that are trusted advisors in different parts of the country. And without that, I mean, it would take, years to get into some of these new markets with what we're doing. Unfortunately, I've some good guys on the team, and it's going to take 6 months instead of 12 years, and we short-circuited the process. But without that, man, it's hard.
Yeah. I've gotten a lot of calls from investors over summer, just private equity guys and investors in the space that want to get into sewer infrastructure. They think it's a great market to get into. And they ask me what's one of the biggest problems. And a lot of the comments in our comment section here of education. It is an education issue. It's like we're not able to now going into education. Is it the fact that as companies we don't understand how to promote or brand ourselves? Is it us or is it this one where I'm working in a city and I go to the next city to talk to them about the technology that city's using, and I go over there and they're like, oh, well, we don't have those problems here, or it doesn't happen in our sewers, or our sewers are different. And I'm like, wait a minute, how are your sewers different? You're like a mile over the road. I'm like, it doesn't make no sense to me. I'm like, well, what's going on? Is it our branding? It's just hard.
They just are. That's how they're different. They just are.
Got it. Yeah.
Just accept it, Chad. Their sewers are different.
I'm not.
Period.
I'm not accepting it. There could be difference in depth and maybe, some other, lengths of miles of pipe, but that's it.
Everyone's a special snowflake. Everyone's
They're
unique.
all different. Yeah. So I guess any comments to that, like how we can better education, how we can, get away from the my sewer's different than the other person's sewers. Is there a way we can handle that objection better? Because I'm still trying to figure it out.
Well, one question before we get to that Michael in the chat asked, he said, when introducing new technologies, how significant is some different things? And do you do a top down or a bottom up? And I think it's a good question. And I think the answer is it depends, right? It depends on the product. It depends on the relationships you have and at what level you have the relationships at. If you want to make some quick inroads, no matter what you're doing, it doesn't matter if it's at the top or the bottom. What you need to do, you got to find the person that's capable of making a decision and has control of the budget.
That's a good point. That's it.
Yeah. I mean, we approach it. I think we try to approach our line of business from both ends. I mean, we'll have a whole list of reasons for the public works director as to why this equipment will save you money on the repairs and maintenance. But then at the same time, we can talk to the operators and show them like, oh, these are the features of the equipment that's going to make your job easier day to day.
Yeah.
Obviously, it depends by product. But I don't think you can. I think it just has to be both. I mean, we'll have operators asking management for our product, right? Because they already know it makes it easier. But then you have to convince from the top, just because this guy likes it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to go for it. You have to have a separate, reason. I'm not going to say a separate pitch because it has to be real, it has to be genuine. And back to what we were talking about earlier, it has to be proven that it's a good idea.
Yeah.
And I think it also comes. Go ahead, Chris. Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, and the other thing, you have to be careful not to get hung up on a specific person, right? When you're, whether it's top or bottom or middle or wherever it's at. I mean, I think we all make that mistake when we're trying to get new things introduced. Is you get somebody that shows a little bit of interest and they're easy to meet with, and they'll let you come in and see them, and then you keep beating on that drum over and over and over, and then like you look up, it's been 2 years, and it's like, all right, this guy's great. He's really friendly and we get to talk a lot. And he always wants to go out for a beer or whatever the case is. But how come we haven't moved the ball forward? And you got to just be willing to not abandon that, but, you just got to connect, like Nick said, with everybody. You got to connect with the guys at this level and the middle and the top. And because eventually you just got to find that champion. That, and again, if you can find the champion that has control of budgets and can make decisions, that's even better. But it may not be that exact person. But you got to find them.
Yeah, no, it's a great point, Chris. And I have a comment, but Alex, you had something you wanted to say.
Well, so I think some of this also comes back to incentives and how government works. And I think, with our product, we have a 90+% market share within private sewer system operators, large companies that operate sewer systems privately for municipalities. We're in almost every one of those locations. Where are we not in every location? In local government, because of the reasons that everyone's mentioned here. It's just the incentives for those people to make changes just aren't as great as someone who's doing this to make money. And our product definitely helps you be more efficient and put more money to the bottom line, but that's not always the incentive that the people have in the local government.
Yeah, that's a great point, Alex. I look at it this way from my experiences. If I'm talking to the bottom, and it's terrible to even say the bottom, but if we're talking to a superintendent or an operator, right, and we're talking about our product and how it's going to make their life easier, right? We get them to buy in, and then it goes up the chain, so to speak. But that person next up is getting talked to by somebody completely different, potentially about a different technology or a better way, or they think it's a better way. And so you got that person trying to tell, let's say it's a director, right? Hey, director, this is a great tech. I love it. We should use it. That director might have a whole different idea of what he or she wants to do with their system. And now you've just got a huge, obstacle that is very difficult to get over in sales. Now, if you look at it the other way, coming from the top down, when you're talking, let's say, to a village manager or a public works director or something like that, let's say a village manager, right? First of all, they probably don't know hardly anything about what's going on. I've noticed that sometimes it just happens. They have a lot of responsibilities and that's not always their focus. But let's say you get to the top and you're working your way and you get in, you got a great way of saving them time, money, all these different things. And then it gets to the bottom and they didn't buy in, and it makes their job easier, but they don't want an easier job. Think about it that way too. You've now created another obstacle at the bottom. It's like now you've just made their job more efficient. They don't want more efficiency. So I kind of look at it that way in different perspectives of the top and the bottom. Go ahead, Susan.
I think.
Sorry, when you were saying next. About efficiency. Yeah, efficiency in that I don't think that's going to be a big issue for much longer. Nick and I had a discussion on the podcast and, I was putting in the chat there alluding to, I think a lot of us in the industry are missing what could be an incredible opportunity for new technology in the midst of an industry crisis. And that industry crisis is people are retiring out. We have the silver tsunami. It began and it's coming through like waves. We had the great resignation through COVID, and we're having problems finding people that want to work in the industry. So what's happening is we've got fewer people who do all of the work. They still have the same amount of work to do. They may even have more work to do as populations are growing, more subdivisions are coming online, and fewer people to do it. Nick and I discussed this. How are those few people that are left? Because even though the industry is trying to do its best to encourage people coming in, I just came back from the National Water and Wastewater Conference up in Halifax, Nova Scotia. And there are some cities in Canada that are doing some very progressive things as far as trying to recruit people to come in. And it's wonderful. A number of us should take place from that. I'm going to share that with you, Nick, for the NASCO committee. But until that gets resolved, technology is going to be the thing that is going to be able to help them stay ahead of the curve so that the people that are still working do not get burned out because they've got too much on their plate to do. And so you might see buy-in from those people lower because now they need something to keep up with the demand, that they might be open to making that shift. It's just, just an observation that Nick and I made that, what is it? There's a kanji symbol for catastrophe, and one symbol is crisis, and the other is opportunity. Danger. That's it. There's the kanji symbol for danger.
Well, and I think a lot of this resides in the issue with I don't want to get too far off topic, but our education system, right? And Chad and I were talking yesterday. I introduced him to a guy that I just kind of connected with recently that's doing some pretty incredible stuff on the trade side. And, we've had, and I went to college, I've got a degree and whatever, but, I don't have any regrets over classes I did or didn't take in college. And I don't have a whole lot of regrets in life, period. But what I do have is the regret. And I can't remember. I think I was telling the guy that I had introduced Chad to the other day. The one regret was I had my stepfather that was a heavy industrial mechanic. And I could have learned so much from him when I was a kid, but I thought I was smarter than everybody else and I was going to go to college and I was going to get out and do all these wonderful things. But the one of the few regrets I have in life is that I didn't take the time to learn all the things he could have taught me with metal lathes and industrial stuff and mechanic stuff. And we're not, as an industry, part of the reason we're having this big vacuum is because we're not getting kids and we're not getting people to push this and bring these and train people and get them interested and show them that there's opportunities where you can have a good career and make good money and have, make a good living in these spots that we're having a lot of people leave and leave these voids. So,
Yeah.
and that comes back to, the whole higher education system in our country and how it's wired and where the money goes. It all comes back to money, as we all.
I have a feeling Chris wants to get political at some point. We're going to do this one time, Chris. You and I know. I'm just messing with you. But you're right. So labor is one of the things we should definitely talk about. I think that we should all probably make that a plan for maybe the next conversation on our roundtable. Let's think about that. We have about 8 minutes left for our hour live. Nick, you wanted to say something. You still want to say something?
Oh, well, Suzanne kind of just took the words right out of my mouth.
Okay.
I think that, like she said, I on the bright side, I don't think there's going to be much of a choice, here in the near future. And we're going to have to try to become more efficient. And then Chris even, I think, spoke about it as well. I mean, there was 4 guys on our crew. Now there's only 2 guys on our crew. How can we still get our job done? And it's we will have to do more with less, until we change the education system and promote the trades more, and probably get shop classes back into high schools and things like that I think there's a push for, but it won't be tomorrow.
Yeah, no doubt. That's definitely an important topic we're going to talk about in labor. I think there's different ways we can solve that problem potentially. I think it's just a matter of buy-in from cities and contractors, and we all got to contribute to it to get it to change. About technologies, yesterday I was meeting with a wastewater treatment plant superintendent, and we brought up technologies. We were talking about technologies and all of them that he currently uses, and he mentioned to me that it was overwhelming. So there is a lot of technologies that are coming to this space that could be overwhelming for a lot of these operators because of time. Going back to the workload that they have, and they got to manage the tech now. Think about that. Is technology causing them more hassle than what it's worth? Think about that. Is it the case? We got like 6 more minutes left. Anybody want to chime in on that?
And the options, technology, like you said, these guys have so much stuff coming at them all the time. And Eric Harold made a comment about in the chat about being negative towards utilities. I don't think that's what we're doing at all. I think we're trying to talk about different challenges we all face, and I face at my company, and they face at their companies, and how what are some things to start thinking about, down the road. But I forgot my last point.
I agree with Chris.
Eric's comment. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think there's certainly not a. I don't think anyone here is trying to put down utilities or put down people in their roles. I think all of us, the people here, all the people that work for us, all the people in the industry, we're all trying to do the right thing, and wastewater is a critical piece of infrastructure, and everyone's trying to do the right thing. What we're talking about really is just some of the challenges that come with trying to implement new technologies, and some of the issues and incentives and misaligned parts of the system that make it more challenging. Not necessarily, we're not saying anyone, at least I'm not trying to say anyone's not trying to do a good job.
I think, Alex, one thing we all are is we're very passionate, and we are team players with all of our operators, because we've been in that space either previously or worked directly with these guys and in utilities, and we're just trying to make it better. Is really what we're trying to do. We're trying to solve their problems, make it easier, make their jobs easier, and so we can reduce overflows, we can reduce sewer collapses, we can reduce these environmentally impacting things in our communities. That's really what I'm very passionate about. That I think that's what we want, and what we intend to do here. So we just want to talk about it, and I think talking about it's what's going to get us to change. I really do. I think this is the most important thing we can do right now. Michael had a question. Alex, how did you obtain the private sector facilities decision makers? Do you want to answer that, Alex?
So I would say we lucked into these. It was the same thing that we have done many times before: trade shows, advertising, manufacturers reps, people out beating the street, and we ended up. The one I'm thinking of particularly, we ended up working with one of their divisions, and they saw how successful they were able to be using our technology, and they told other people, and they told other people, and over time, we ended up in all their operations. And that's what I've seen from the private sector is there is a way that they're able to share this knowledge amongst their different divisions. And when people see something that works, it's a lot easier to cross over from one to the other. Where when we were talking earlier, and Chad, you were saying this, customer acquisition cost. You were saying, I go to one town and they love this thing, and I go to the next town, they never heard of it. And I think that's very, very common in our space. And so there's no real mechanism to share this stuff. And there is attempts at trade shows and through presentations and things like that, but there's no overarching ability in some instances to share this and get it more widely adopted outside the private groups that have some headquarters ability.
Exactly. Yeah, we got 2 minutes left.
Chad, can I weigh in on this?
Yeah, go for it.
Can I weigh in on this just because this is my wheelhouse here?
Go for it.
Online networking, LinkedIn, connecting, being part of a group, being active, and reaching out, not being afraid to reach out. Don't try to sell something. Just begin by opening a dialogue and having a conversation and building a relationship. That is probably the best way to go about it. And it's inexpensive because LinkedIn and social media and content marketing, it has given us an opportunity to get in touch with people and educate them like no other marketing medium has done before. The other thing that is very overlooked is PR. It has got the highest rate of return of investment of any marketing medium, yet it is the most underutilized. And I know we're running short on time, but I will just share with you one quick story. Wrote a story and got a contractor published, and his technology was featured on the cover of MSW magazine. A client he'd been trying to get in the door with for 3 years wouldn't give him the time of day. The minute that article came out, he gets a phone call and says, hey, I've been working with this guy with my PWEA. We've been friends for 25 years. If he says something is good, I know it's good. When can you come here for a demo? And that's how PR works. When you make your customer the hero, you become the star.
Yeah, no, it's good insight, Susan. It's true.
Yep.
It's true.
It's gold.
And that's
gold.
It is. And my apologies. And we got like 15 seconds left. I'm using a new stream service. So I guess the comments didn't get posted on LinkedIn. So I will work on this for the next one. That will make sure we'll have
technology.
Yeah, I'm still learning technology. It's just one of those things. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. I think this is very productive. I don't know what else to say. I think this is where we need to get a lot of education started, talking about these problems, talking about solutions, and then we can all start to work better together to fix a lot of these sewer infrastructure problems that are out there, right? Overflows are still occurring. Sewer collapses, are still happening. There's a lot of issues in our sewer world that we're just not resolving, and the problems are still persisting and they're not getting fixed like they should be, right? So that's what we're here for. Anybody else want to say anything before I end here?
Thanks for putting this together. Yeah, thanks, Chad.
Yeah, thanks, Chad.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone, for making comments.
Yeah, really,
I'm sorry
Chad,
I didn't
thank you for everybody that commented and participated.
Yeah, for sure. Everybody, thank you. Awesome. Well, thank you, guys. And we're going to end this. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
You too.
I always mess up his last name, as he told me the last time when I did his podcast.